Hello, nice to see you back here in this community of women academics and researchers. It's about learning and leading together. So while more people are joining, please introduce yourself if you haven't already done it in the chat. Write your institution, your research area, and whatever else your country may be when everybody else are joining. And also important, if you want to listen in French, go down to the bottom below and click more and then interpretation. And then I think it should select either you say start as well. But maybe Monique can explain that. Monique, are you with us to explain in French?
Alors, bonjour à tous et bienvenue encore une fois à cette nouvelle section de plus de femmes dans la recherche. Alors, en attendant que tout le monde puisse se connecter, vous pouvez dans le chat écrire votre nom, votre domaine d'activité, euh, votre pays d'origine, en attendant que tout le monde puisse se connecter pour que tout le monde puisse faire connaissance. Merci.
Thank you so much, Monique. Now, my name is Vibeke Quaid. I'm a senior communications consultant for Danida Fellowship Center, and that is an institution under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Denmark. And we manage research collaborative projects between Danish universities and research institutions and their equivalents in low income and middle income countries that Denmark collaborates with. I'm here with my good colleague, Naliaka Odera, who's from Maraso Institute, and we are together coordinating the Learn and Lead Together initiative.
Yes, yes. Hi, welcome everyone. Good to see all of you coming back in. As Vibeke said, my name is Naliaka. I'm the communications lead at the Moazo Institute. And today we are wrapping up our second module, Owning Your Spotlight, of the Learn and Lead Together training under More Women in Research. Many of you joined us when we launched the module with an engaging live tutorial session on the 3rd of June. But for those of you who are new, we warmly welcome you.
Now, let's just a small recap of why we're here. The More Women in Research community aims to strengthen collaboration between women, academics, and researchers, and to pave the way for more women in research for that simple reason that we don't have enough women in research, and particularly in leadership positions. So it's a community that started in 2024, where 50 women researchers met in Tanzania, and to discuss what to do about this. And it has since then spread to Asia and Latin America, and it now also includes Mavaso fellows and also others because it's an open community. Now we have different activities that takes place under this umbrella, and it's all about women academics learning and leading together, and in this process lifting each other up. I think we have hit a spot that was needed, because we can see that the community from 50 initial women researchers is now more than 1,000. I hope you are in the WhatsApp group, and this is within 2 years, So there's something is good about this. So, but here in 2026, we are specifically looking at 3 areas. We've been looking at funding in module 1, and you can revisit it. We've been looking at communication. We are in the middle of that. And then we will also go into mentorship in quarter, I think, 3 and 4 of this year.
Exactly. So to recap, as I mentioned, on the 3rd of June, we introduced the Owning Your Spotlight module, which is our communications module, and it focuses on public engagement and communication. We had a live tutorial session on how to write a bio, and we had a guest speaker, Dr. Gifty Sunka Mills. That was followed by a 5-week period of self-paced learning, where you could access the materials either from the DFC website or from the Moazo Learning Exchange platform. And today we're rounding off Owning Your Spotlight with another exciting session. And once again, we have some amazing guest speakers lined up for you. We have a seasoned media professional, Shelley Walia. We have two researchers who have each engaged with the public in diverse and interesting ways, Dr. Mary Agoriwo and Professor Jacqueline Golden. So we'll hear from them first individually, and then we'll come back together for a panel discussion.
But now more before we dive in. A lot of you attended the first session that Naliaka just mentioned, and maybe you also gone through the self-paced learning. We hope you have. But we would like to find out and share with everybody, how did you find this experience? So please, look in the chat that Elena just shared a link and go into that. That's a Mentimeter. Write one word or 3 words, maximum 3 words, that sum up the experience you have had, so we can see among ourselves how it actually has been. So just don't overthink it. Just go ahead and write. And let's see how the module was. Elena, will you be able to share it so we can all follow? Great.
Ironic, the first word, great. Empowering and inspiring. That's really, I think, the 2 keywords that we really wanted to hear when we started this, is to empower. In other words, to give you some level of feeling like you can do this thing yourself, and inspire some ways in which you could actually approach public engagement. We also have interesting, amazing, engaging, and I can definitely testify to the engaging word. In the tutorial session, we had such great engagement. It was really good to hear from all the different people trying to improve their bio and actually walk away with some practical tips. We also have motivating, inspirational, informative. We're glad, a big thing behind why we wanted to do this was to give tangible information for women researchers everywhere, so that there isn't, it's not as difficult to access information that we think is vital. So keep coming in with your responses. As Vibeke said, the link to the Mentimeter is in the chat. And it's always good for us to just hear how you're finding these modules. It's really good feedback for us. Inspirational and great are coming out big, which means that several of you have felt either that it's been inspirational or that it's been great, which really, that's kind of what we're hoping for. So that's really good news for us. But yeah, please feel free to keep sharing your thoughts on that.
Now I could see Gifty just came in. Hello, Gifty, our guest speaker from the last time. Now, thanks so much for your input for this. But before we start, we have some house rules. Gosh, huh? It keeps on going on. So keep the speaker view enabled so you can see the spotlighted speakers. Mute while the speakers are presenting, and you're more than welcome to keep the camera on so we can see each other. Always use the chats, every comments or questions you have, just use the chat, because we will monitor it and look at it and get back to it in the panel discussion. And then really important, if you want to listen to French, then click the bottom or go to the more button and click interpretation, and Monique will speak to you. Are we missing anything, Naliaka?
Okay, I think we're finally almost ready to go. But before we get started, I want to hand it over to another colleague of ours, Dorsila from the Mowazo Institute, to give us a quick recap of the Owning Your Spotlight module before we bring in our guest speakers.
Thank you so much, Naliaka and Vibeke. Hi, everyone. As mentioned by Naliaka, my name is Dorsila, the Fellowship Program Officer at the Mowazo Institute. The objectives of the Owning Your Spotlight module were as follows. to help researchers create multifunctional bios that summarize their research and career journeys, to equip researchers with practical skills for navigating media and social media engagement, to help researchers begin to build a public engagement plan and increase awareness of their digital footprint, and finally, to provide real-world insights into the journey of public engagement for a researcher. As with the previous module, Get Funded, the Owning Your Spotlight module used blended learning through self-paced, downloadable PDF lessons. This was lesson 1, 2, and 3, as well as live virtual sessions for storytelling, discussion, and peer learning, which include today's storytelling closing session and the kickoff tutorial session. On the learning platform, you also found lesson 1, which was creating your bio. This accompanies the kickoff live event in providing a step-by-step tutorial on how to create a multi-use bio. Lesson 2 was how to step into the spotlight, tips on engaging journalists. This one provided a step-by-step guide for researchers to practice for a media interview and tips on interacting with the media. And finally, lesson 3, how to step into the spotlight, tips on social media engagement. This provided an introductory guide for researchers on social media concepts and how to leverage LinkedIn. There are also additional resources that included a spotlight checklist. This was a short checklist for a researcher to build a public engagement plan. We also had a Safety Online resource. This resource provided tips on maintaining online safety as a woman researcher. We also had additional links, audiovisual content, spotlighting visibility for women researchers. Before we get into today's closing session, we would like to get feedback from you about the module. We sent out a postcard survey yesterday. In case you didn't receive it or you have not had a chance to fill it yet, we will be sharing it on the chat. Elena will be posting the link on the chat, and we will give you a few minutes to those who have not yet filled in the survey to do so. A few minutes to fill in the survey, and then we can move on. As we fill in the survey, I just want to say thank you for your participation, and I will now hand it over to Vibeke to introduce you to our first speaker. Over to you, Vibeke.
Thanks a lot, Drusilla. And now let's move on. I would now like to introduce our first speaker, Shelley Valia. She's a journalist, and she's also a Danita Fellow, and she took part in a program for climate journalists that we had last year. And the reason why I mentioned that is because part of this program was how to connect and work together as the two professions, media and researchers and academics. And while doing so, what are the benefits? And how do you then also combat fake news, which we are all kind of faced with. Now, Shelley is a senior media professional. She's an executive editor, and she's currently leading The Quint, which is a mobile-first Indian digital media company. In her 10 years as senior editor, she has produced several award-winning videos and multimedia stories on gender, human rights, climate change, and health. And today she will also be getting into how media is working with AI. Very exciting. While Shelley is presenting, please feel free to add any questions you have in the chat. And because after, as I just mentioned before, after the speakers have spoken, then we'll open up for Q&A in the panel. So Shelley, we are so happy to have you with us today and to give us insights on how media and academics are collaborating in the best possible way.
Thank you so much, Vibeke. It's always a pleasure to interact with you. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Thank you so much. I'm very, very grateful to you and your team for inviting me to this discussion. I have been seeing all the, people introducing themselves, and I've seen someone from UAE, from Ethiopia, from Tanzania. You have such a great mix of people. And every time, as it so happens for me, like whenever I find myself in a room of researchers, I end up learning a lot myself. So I'm really looking forward to this. So as Viveke very kindly introduced me, I work with a digital news media company in New Delhi, India. I'm currently in the UK, but I work out of India. I've been a journalist for 15 years, and most of what I'm going to share comes from a place of working in digital newsrooms. And I think it's very relevant for all of you who's attending today, because more and more, as you know, the shift is towards digital media. So, to put it very simply, researchers like you and me have a lot in common, right? We are essentially trying to help people understand what's happening around them. But we go about it in very different ways. This is something that has been long addressed. And those differences can sometimes make us feel like we are speaking in completely different languages. So, for example, as a researcher, you build knowledge, you try and discover what we don't know yet, you generate new evidence and insights. Journalists, on the other hand, are helping make sense of events that have happened. At the same time, your work is long term. We are working on very, very tight deadlines. As far as your audiences go, you're working for an audience which has an academic background. We are literally working for anyone and everyone. Anyone who chances upon a piece of news article or a news event which has been shared on Instagram is our audience, right? I can talk about all the differences I want, but here's what's been one of my greatest learning as a journalist, but more as an editor, which is that there are more things in common amongst us. And when we come together, great things can happen. And this is something that I can say from all the stories that I have worked on. Just want to clarify, I am more of a climate journalist. So some of the examples that I will be sharing come from there. At the same time, we do a lot of stories on health and gender. But all some of my learnings are also being an editor who has to go through a lot of pitches which come my way on a day-to-day basis. Now let me show you how and why I say that we have a lot of things in common. Every year, we spend a considerable amount of time planning our coverage around the pollution spike during the winter season in New Delhi. Now, this is something which is very well documented. Most of you might have heard about it, read about it. So, whether we are reporting from the ground, whether we are examining policy decisions, whether we are analyzing data, whether we are explaining how pollution affects people's health, all our stories rely on researchers like you. It's because researchers are the ones who bring in the expertise and they help us translate complex evidence. As you can see, I've shown you a very, very varied examples of the kind of stories that are possible when you think of just one topic, which is pollution, right? Now, I'm going to pause here and explain to you what are the things that I want you to be thinking about when I share these examples with you. One, that journalists are always looking for a fresh peg, right? Even when we have to go back to pollution year after year, talk about it, you have to also kind of keep up with the times, but also keep thinking of a fresh way of looking at something which happens every year, right? So that's where we sort of the brainstorming or the ideation that journalists do, it's a lot to do about thinking about that fresh angle, whether we should talk about the health aspect of it, whether we talk about policy, whether we talk about data, and so on and so forth. The other thing which is really important and which is something that researchers need to understand about how journalists work is what is timely and relevant to now, which is the present, right? So the stories that you will be thinking about, I will come to how you can contribute to the media. But when you are thinking about interacting with the media, what you need to also understand is why does this matter right now? Why should you be talking about it right now? Why should the journalists care about it right now? Right? The third thing, which I already mentioned, is that every article, every good deep dive article, or the kind of articles publications like ours do, they will rely on multiple studies and multiple experts over a single source. So when you are pitching your ideas, please always remember, again, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but please always remember that every idea, a journalist will, a good journalist would likely go to multiple people to corroborate that information and to bring it together in a balanced and reliable way. Because otherwise it just becomes a one version story, right? So that's how we typically like to work. Now, then there are chances, then there are stories that we chance upon and make it ours. So I'm still talking about pollution. This is something that we discovered last year. As I mentioned, all the stories that I mentioned to you just now, they were stories where we relied on multiple experts. But there are also different ways of doing it. As a digital organization, we are also not just thinking about stories, but also formats. And this is where, again, I want you to think about when things are changing digitally, how you can also keep up with the changing times and contribute in the same way. So we came across this story, a report which appeared in a very reputed climate platform called Mongabay, which reported about these urban parks which had come up in Delhi. We saw this story and we wanted to report on it. One way of doing it would have been to talk to a bunch of scientists who were involved in, in the ecological restoration of this place. But we thought about it a little bit more, and actually we weren't really thinking of the format then, but we started meeting these scientists. Now, one of the persons that we met was Dr. Fayaz, and he really didn't have the time to sort of meet us and talk to us, but he still gave us like 10 minutes. When he started talking, we saw that he was really, really passionate about what he was doing, and those 10 minutes quickly became an hour. And the next thing we knew, we had fixed a time. We went up to him. He did a walking tour of the place with us. So he took us around the entire place that they had rebuilt, an urban forest, and took us around and also shared a lot of interesting stories and small details about like the new species that they had spotted after a very long gap, and so on and so forth. So it was his passion and his knowledge which kind of came together and made us think that this story should be told as a walking tour and not as a written piece of information that people would probably read, probably not read. When you show and tell, it just becomes a little bit more alive. I've put a small chunk of the video that we did.
We can't hear it, Shirley.
You can't hear?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Then there seems to be some problem with the audio, but he's essentially talking about how they spotted these algal bloom in the water and they jumped into the water, which was absolutely against like they were interfering with nature and in their shots. So he was very, very descriptive, he was very graphic, and he helped us through this walking tour of the biodiversity park, which would have not been possible without like a academician, a scientist actually sort of working and trusting, the journalist to tell their story. So that was just one example that I thought was useful. Now, very quickly, because we are a little short of time, I wanted to very specifically talk about the ways that researchers can contribute. Now, there are different ways that journalists work with researchers, and I'm again coming in from my experience as a journalist and as an editor both. So, one of the ways that you can really contribute is helping with the background knowledge for any in-depth pieces. So it happens very often with us that we don't have an idea yet, we don't know what the story is going to be, but we reach out to certain researchers and we kind of have a chat with them and try and understand which way should our stories go, what is it that we are missing out, what is the context that we need to build on. And some of these conversations, some of these chats actually lead us to the story peg that I mentioned in the beginning and bring out the sort of like the best kind of reporting that we have done. The other thing that I'm sure like some of you are already doing it is to offer expert commentary on the record, right? Like a lot of stories won't be possible because journalists know how to tell the story, but a lot of the knowledge and the expertise can only come from researchers and from the experts and from our sources and so on. So is the one of the other ways, and this is also a way to kind of get recognized, which is to offer expert commentary on the record. The third thing would be to write opinion articles, and this is something that I, will talk a little bit more about, because I feel like it can be a great starting point for a researcher when you write opinion articles, because it really does, as I mentioned right in the end, it really does open new doors for you. When you kind of become associated with a publication, when you start writing for them, you do put your name out there, you do put your work out there, and that really helps other publications to identify your work, because we do a lot of, like cross referencing of material. So at the end of the day, that's a really good way to put yourself out there when you write opinion pieces for different places. And the third thing will be, and this is something that I don't just tell, this is not just an advice for researchers, but like in general, be open to trying new things. There is, I haven't mentioned AI here, but there is no harm in dabbling with, say, a podcast, say, social media, say, videos, and even AI, because I think we are living in a time when, things are changing rapidly. If you are averse to something, of course, understand the cons of the changes, but don't be averse, be more experimental, is what I would just sort of say here. So when you, like, for example, if Dr. Fayaz wasn't open to facing the camera or taking a tour around the biodiversity park, we wouldn't have chanced upon such a good story. So be open to trying new things. So these are some of the ways that you can contribute to the media by writing, by offering, by getting quoted, and by becoming part of the podcasts, the news videos, and so on and so forth. This is a quote that I found very interesting. And, as a journalist, I'm going on and on talking. I thought, you should also hear from um, an academician. So the conversation is one of the places where I myself, often go when I want to read about a certain, research which has been written in a little bit simplified way, right? So it's a very reliable platform which gives a platform to academics, to researchers to showcase their work. This is an article from 2015, so a good 11 years ago, which talks about why academics should write for the public. It says, and what I was saying about opening new doors, it says exactly that just need to start writing, getting edited, and seeing if the public reads them. Through this process, academics will not only learn to express themselves clearly, but most likely become better scientists as well. Maybe you can check this out, it might help. But I want to focus on start writing, getting edited, and seeing if the public reads them. I feel that today we have the tools to be able to do them. I mean, the third bit of it, the public reads them, and I'll just talk about that in a minute. Just some very useful tips, which I think is something, that researchers can think about. You might have heard me say that, this is the story that we were working on. We never sort of, we use the word article, but every report that a news journalist does, it's called a story. And I feel that somewhere researchers, when they reach out to a journalist, also need to start thinking story and not what their study focus is, or what they have to move beyond that. So some just very basic tips, but I think it can be a bit of a game changer, because this is something that I kind of go back and tell, the people that I work with, the researchers that I interact with very closely. The first tip will be, and this is specifically if you are reaching out to a media publication to submit an op-ed, please send a pitch with your bio and not a walk-in, which is basically an article, a written article. And again, the third thing is to the right person. So first is send a pitch, don't send a written article, because most of the times there is a higher probability of that getting rejected or that not being seen. For every journalist, even when they're pitching to an editor, the first step is to write a pitch and to be able to make a submission. And then once that is commissioned is when you turn that into an article. In the pitch, you can typically talk about, when you're doing an op-ed, you can just lay out your argument. If you were doing a report, you will also talk about who you are going to be speaking with, who is going to counter that view, and so on and so forth. The other thing that I have mentioned is to the right person. Now, it's really important that you are reaching out to the organizations which publish the kind of work that you want to get published. And also, you are able to find the editor or someone who works in the position of the editor to be able to make that submission. So it is important to kind of, just not reach out to any organization. So I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. But it is important that you are sending a pitch and you are trying to reach out to the right person. The other thing which I think researchers get to hear a lot, and I feel really sorry, is to avoid jargons. I am not very averse to, jargons. I like the idea of using a complicated phrase, which is something that, like a general public won't understand, but putting an explanation right under it. So there are different ways of doing it, but overall, it should be as simplified as someone who is not an expert in the field to be able to follow along. Wherever possible, it is good to think about the human impact. So, for example, you're working on a story on pollution, like when we were working on stories on pollution, every story that we were thinking about, we were connecting it to how it is going to impact the human. So, every story started with a case study, started with how so and so thing had, impacted the life of an actual human being. The next thing to think about is there a bigger picture? Like, is there something more? Is there a sort of like a national repercussion to what you're talking about? Or is there even at that local level, if there is a bigger picture there that you can mention in your pitch? The fifth thing would be to build relationships, which is, when you have kind of made an impact or written for an organization, try and see if you can meet that journalist in person, try and set up meetings with maybe the editor and try and build relationships, because that is the only way to kind of carry this on for a long time, and also for the journalist or the editor to be able to trust you to come back to you to ask for your findings, for your expertise when they are pursuing certain articles. So it has to work both ways. One is through op-eds, but the other thing is also that the journalist and the editors should be able to come back to you because they have a relationship with you and work with you together. The next thing would be to work with an editor. This is something sounds very, like if you read that article that I was just mentioning about, it does talk about that how it is important to take some feedback, how they can actually put you in the right direction and help your help your work look better. And the next thing would be to take public feedback. When I say public feedback, I actually mean social media feedback. Every story, for example, that we do as a digital platform is broken down into short videos, into, news carousels on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. So it gets shared, and those social media handles are is how the news is getting distributed in today's day and age. So it is something that you cannot be, again, averse to, and use that to your advantage to really get the word out there about what you are writing and so on. I know that this is one of the biggest fears. What if I'm misquoted? What if, like I say something and it, just doesn't, like, what if I'm represented wrong? Now, one of the things, and I know that it's not, it is unfair if you are misquoted, and I'm going to address that up top. But at the same time, I think there are certain things that you can, certain steps that you can take to avoid finding yourself in that situation. One of the things will be, as I said earlier, find the media outlet that fits in well with the work that you do. There are a lot of academic heavy news publications. At the same time, in the world where you have epidemics, you have pandemics, you have, like climate change, we are relying on researchers more and more news publications are actually open to having researchers write. So it's actually a pretty ripe, good time for, researchers to put themselves out there. But having said that, find the media outlet that fits in well. The next thing is do your research. Like when you're reaching out to an editor, when you're reaching out to a journalist, try and see if you can find what is the kind of work they have done. Is this something that, read what they have done, see the videos they have done. Does it work for you? Does it not work for you? And then accordingly proceed. When you are when a journalist reaches out to you and asks for your quotes or sort of expertise, on a particular subject, please feel free to ask what is the story's focus. Sometimes just knowing what is the focus of the story, or what the focus of the story is going to be, can really help clear doubts and can ensure that you don't feel you're being misquoted, right? Because a lot of times you have spoken about one thing, but the story is entirely about another. It's good to kind of clear that, in right in the beginning. As I said, use complicated concepts, use complex concepts, but also give a simpler explanation or an analogy for people to understand, for more and more people to understand. The next thing would be to ask for a playback. Now, this is something that, of course, journalists do not like when it comes, and I mean, they don't do it. It's not something that we do as practice. But when it comes to experts, when it comes to, like researchers, they are working very collaboratively at the end of the day. So it's not a bad thing to ask for a playback, which basically means if you have spoken to them on the phone, or if you have sent them an email reply, then that's absolutely fine. But if you've spoken to them on the phone, or if you've done an in-person interview, and if they are quoting you in text, ask for your quotes to be checked again. That's it. But of course, I would suggest that do not make too many changes or don't go back on what you said. The idea is to just ensure that the quotes are neat and everything is in place. And then at that stage, of course, correct any misunderstandings. And finally, if you feel that there is a need for you to share a link of your study bio, if you don't want any, like if you want to ensure that your name is spelled correctly and so on and so forth, just kind of do those to be on the safer side. I just want to end by, kind of mentioning why I feel that this is so important, everything that I'm talking about right now. And given that I work so regularly with researchers, I know it for a fact that we are, and this is something that I speak a lot about on different platforms, what the churn that is happening in the news media, the crisis that the media industry is facing right now. Because of the rise of misinformation and disinformation, because of the rise of AI, social media influencers, there is a huge trust deficit amongst the audience when it comes to the media. And I feel the more research driven analysis that we do as journalists, and the more spaces we open for researchers, the more we are able to drive credibility, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is the audience is changing. So there is news fatigue, there is fleeting attention span. And it is important to be able to still try and fill that gap where you are able to give them the information that they need, not just the information that they want. Because right now, a lot of information is want driven. At the same time, this is a bit of a positive shift which has happened, and this is something that I've seen personally, is now all stories that journalists are doing is not about, updating because there is a lot of like breaking news platforms and so on and so forth. There has been a shift away from that because of all the changes that has happened within the industry. And for a lot of organizations, there is a focus on less is more content strategy. So more publications are doing less volume of stories, but they are doing better stories. That again opens avenues for researchers to be able to, participate in them and to contribute in a more meaningful way. And finally, there are AI experiments which are happening across newsrooms. I would have loved to talk a little bit more about this, and we can probably connect offline. I'll leave my email address. And so are we. I mean, we are constantly experimenting with AI products and trying to see if we can use different interfaces to make the editorial, workflow better. But at the same time, the way AI is being used in certain newsrooms, it's also made it very important to protect the integrity of information. And that is just a thought that I wanted to leave you guys with. But before I go, since I have been using the word collaboration a lot, I just wanted to see if any of you would be interested in making, a quick pitch about the research that you are doing. And yeah, I can probably give some feedback if I think that it requires one.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shelley, for your presentation. I hope that the people who are listening can maybe use the time for the next few speakers to start to put together the pitch idea to to come up with. I think it's a really rare opportunity to actually have a media professional in our midst, especially as researchers. And so, you know, when it comes to opportunities where possible, make use of them, right? And so if you need some time to think up of a pitch that, and especially thinking of some of the tips that Shelley gave about avoiding jargon and thinking of what the story is and why it matters, take the time, just a few sentences to make it like less than a 60-second pitch. Feel free to do that. What we'll do is we'll move on to the next speaker, and then we'll come back if you have pitches. And what you can do is actually you can just put also in the chat first of all some questions for Shelley if you have any additional questions that she maybe didn't cover, although it was a pretty thorough presentation. But if you have any further questions about how researchers can approach media, this concept of framing your research as a story. If you have any questions about that, feel free to put them in the chat. And then also, if you feel brave, as Shelley said, feel brave enough to do a short pitch, you can also say in the chat and we'll come back to you after the speakers. So thank you once again, Shelley, for sharing all of those notes with us. All right, so for now, let's get into our next speaker. Dr. Mary Watani Agoriwo is a physiotherapist, a researcher, and an educator with expertise in rehabilitation and neurological sciences, especially Parkinson's disease. And she's also a 2023 Moazo Fellow. Her work spans muscle stiffness assessment, physiotherapy management, and rehabilitation systems in Ghana. Through peer-reviewed publications and international presentations, she has advanced evidence on PD care in the African context. As a lecturer and supervisor, she supports student research and facilitates workshops on neurological rehabilitation and evidence-based practice. Mary plays a key role in regional initiatives and research, including the Transforming Parkinson's Care in Africa study, the Africa Rehabilitation Network, and the MasterCard Foundation's Assistive Technology Landscape Project. Her contributions to physiotherapy guidelines for COVID-19 and PD support groups reflect her applied research and policy engagement. She also leads public awareness campaigns and caregiver initiatives that bridge research and practice. She's driven by a commitment for equity, and she advocates for accessible, evidence-based rehabilitation services. Welcome, 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 Dr. Mary.
Yes, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone from Ghana. I'm happy to be called upon to share my experience, so I will go ahead and then share my screen. So, as being introduced, I'm Mary Watani Agoriwo, and I'm a physiotherapist. Currently, I lecture at the University of Health and Allied Sciences in Ghana. And what I'm going to do this afternoon is to share my journey regarding public engagement with everyone here. Shelley has done a great job in telling us how the journalists will approach the researcher when they find something interesting around your space, and then what they require of you should they approach you for any form of explanation and engagement in the public space. What I'm going to share with you is from the other side, when the researcher approaches the journalist, so that you can make your case and let your voice be heard. So that's what I'm going to do, and this is about my personal journey with regards to public engagement. So First of all, one will want to know why we need to engage the public. And sorry, let me change this. I have shared the wrong slide. So let me stop sharing. I shared the wrong slide. Okay. Can we see the full screen?
It's all
Yes,
good.
looks good.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. If I had gone on with that, it would have taken us over 30 minutes to deliver that. Okay, thank you. Okay, yes. So why do we need to engage the public as researchers? You have done your research and you have other avenues to disseminate your findings. Why do you need to really engage the public on the other side? And I believe that this enhances visibility and relevance of the research, because for the population for which you did the research, they need to hear. And not everyone is on the space of journals to read what you have published in the journal space. It also helps to reduce stigma and misinformation. In my own case, my research focused on rehabilitation for persons with Parkinson's disease and movement disorders. And there are so many misconceptions about this disease, being it spiritual and all other misconceptions, being it a curse and all that. So when you engage the public based on your research findings, you help break some of these stigmas and then misconceptions about whatever you are working around. It also encourages policy uptake and systemic change as well, because it is based on your recommendations that policymakers may tend to look at that side and then put structures in place to help improve the lives of people within that space. It also empowers communities to see themselves as partners in knowledge creation. Now, in stepping into the public sphere, like Dr. Shelley mentioned, sometimes there could be some fears, especially the fear of being misquoted or being misunderstood. These were some of the fears I entertained before I had my first appearance on television in 2014. This was far before I had plans to pursue PhD and then having the greater edge to share what I found in my PhD study. I entertained all these fears, but what kept me going? What actually pushed me to keep going was to know that research is powerful only when it's shared beyond the journals. And that is where you get the greater number of people, the people who will really benefit from the research that you have conducted. I also had courage and confidence, and this was rooted in my field knowledge and my expertise that I carried across. I am in the space, I'm a physiotherapist, I'm managing persons with Parkinson's disease, and then I have also researched into it. So I believed in my knowledge, I believed in my expertise, and that is what kept me going. And it dealt with the fear of being misquoted or being misunderstood, because I had the knowledge, I knew how to put it across. So if even there is the need to explain further, you explain with the relevant facts. And also, I knew I could work through networks and collaborations, and the media is a friend, or the journalists, they are friends that we could work with, and other social organizations that I could work with to make my knowledge available outside. So this is the video, but I'm going to go on because it's in our local language. Now, in terms of the processes, what can one do? Have I stopped sharing?
No,
Or
it's still sharing.
it's still sharing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So what can one do? My slides are not moving. Okay. Okay, good. So what can one do to keep the spot? Yes, after presenting, after doing what you have to do, what can you do to keep in touch within the public space? What I continued to do was to write articles which were published in the daily graphics. So I took opportunity on significant days like World Parkinson's Day, World Physiotherapy Day, to put out something that will continue to keep me relevant in terms of knowledge sharing. And then also hosting community workshops and public lectures, collaboration with patient groups, NGOs, and policymakers were steps that I took. I also made use of the social media to share insights in accessible format, because it's not everyone who is in the traditional space. And now, because of the way social media has grown, we have so many people on that space. Also producing documentaries or podcasts that humanize research, that brings the findings very close to the people, to their level of understanding. These are some of the activities I have carried over the years, but these are very recent ones. So in this year, April, on April 11th is World Parkinson's Day, but being a coordinator of a support group, Parkinson's Disease Support Group Ghana, we ran this as a whole month event. So the entire month of April, we ran series of activities. And I took advantage of that to write this article for the Daily Graphic. And I looked at rehabilitation in Parkinson's disease and overlooked cornerstone of care. This particular article is motivated by the findings of my PhD research that I did. That revealed that in as much as rehabilitation is key in terms of managing Parkinson's disease, only few patients are able to access this service. It's either they are not referred, they are referred, but they don't really appreciate the importance of it because they have no knowledge of it. And because of that, they are underutilizing the rehabilitation option of managing Parkinson's disease, and went ahead to make recommendations to improve access to rehabilitation and the use of rehabilitation as one of the key means of managing Parkinson's disease, since we currently do not have a cure for the condition. I have also engaged in community workshops, and that's me there at one of our major lorry stations in Accra, engaging a vendor there, talking about Parkinson's disease. And the other one below here is me as part of a conference panel, talking about how we will improve access to care for persons with Parkinson's across Africa. Then I have also engaged in TV stations and then radio stations, sessions to talk about Parkinson's disease, talk about physiotherapy, and how well we could help people with Parkinson's live with the condition. Now, I want to dwell a bit more on what I call my highlight for 2026. I believe there will be more highlights coming in the future, but this is what I have to dwell more on. I believe that the journey with others to keep one in the spotlight is very, very important. As an individual, I couldn't have done this alone. And I've earlier mentioned getting in touch with support groups and all. This particular documentary highlights how the researcher approached the journalist to get something out there that people can really relate with. But it did not come easy. I started in 2025, in March, where I reached out to a colleague who was in the media space, but not for him to assist me, but for someone else that he works with, that I have identified is in this space. The person is a journalist, but works more in relation to health-related issues and projecting health conditions. So that is the person I actually wanted to reach out to. Okay. Yes, so I reached out, but unfortunately, that did not work out. I had also wanted a slot on their media station to discuss about Parkinson's disease in 2025. That did not work out. So I gave up on it. But then
this is it. Your case now becomes a very
I think I'm having some technical issues here. Please pardon me and we'll make progress. So in 2026, this year, I reached back to my colleague. Oh my God. I think my screen has stopped sharing.
Yeah, it stopped sharing now.
Why am I having this challenge? But these things do happen. So
It's there now.
okay.
Yeah.
It's always quite distracting. Yeah.
It's
Okay.
all right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I reached back with the same request to get this documentary done. And from January to February, I kept following up. And finally, I got the positive feedback I had been waiting for, that the colleague had agreed to assist me and then the support group get this done. So from 2nd February, I still had to wait until 19th before I finally received a call from this colleague. I believe the Ghanaians on this call can identify this picture, and that is Portia Gabo, one of our renowned journalists in this space. So she gladly accepted to assist myself and then my support group to get this documentary done. We selected our participants and started the interviews. And by 1st April, we were done with our last interview. And on the 9th, we had our documentary titled Fighting Parkinson's aired on TV3 on the 15th of April. What you see on the other side is the teaser that was used to advertise the documentary before the 15th that it was aired. So I will play it. It's not so long, so we can all see this teaser. At the end of the day, I'll put the link for the main documentary in the chat for anyone that wants to watch the full story.
Mr. Kujo, this is it. Your case now becomes a very you're fighting your problem.
January 8, 2026, a man's appearance on television goes viral in Ghana.
I was checking salary, the autistic, all kinds of disparaging comments. But of course, I mean, I accepted to live with it.
Beneath the shaking was a silent disease, once known as the shaking palsy.
I argued a lot when they first said it was Parkinson, because I said, no, if that person doesn't come, how do you know that God can deliver?
When they saw me in my hometown, they eventually went to my dad and said, hey, you can't allow this, so please, we know a spiritualist in Tafia Gomez.
In Fighting Parkinson's, we delve deeper into a condition that does not care about title bill, about fame,
regardless of how we treat the disease, it will over time continue to get worse.
At the moment, it's not curable.
We investigate the triggers.
Anything that has a chemical called paraquat in it is a risk factor for Parkinson's disease. But guess what? They are all over Ghana.
And a local bean that may hold the secret to a Ghanaian remedy.
7% of that bean is levodopa, which is the chemical or the medication used in Parkinson's disease.
A story of people fighting a battle inside their own nervous system. Fighting Parkinson's, a TV3 special assignment. Showing Wednesday, April 15 at 9 p.m. only on TV3.
Yes, so thank you very much for watching that. And this is how and where we go to with the engagement that started somewhere in January 2026. And Mr. Franklin Cudjoe, as you saw there, is, if we can describe him as a public figure, yes, it's well known. And he actually also added a lot of weight to this documentary because we had to approach him. Just around that time, he was invited to speak on a matter on this same TV station, and the signs of Parkinson's were so glaring, people didn't know what it was. So when we decided to do this documentary, we reached out to him as well. He was already a member of our support group, but wasn't very active. But finally, he agreed and took part in this interview, which made a significant impact for us. So what were some of the lessons that I learned over these years that I've been engaging in this public space, being it my articles that I have written, my community engagement and workshops, and then coming to this documentary that I managed to get done? I've learned that engaging the media projected the relevance of my works because these are things I've been working on over the years. And maybe few people within my circles, few people within my workspace are the ones who now know what Parkinson's is and how it affects one's quality of life. I also learned that clarity, simplicity, and collaboration with journalists and established social groups are key to owning my spotlight. Shirley mentioned about clarity and not using jargons, and that is where the simplicity comes in. I learned that the hard way because I didn't really get this kind of guidance. Yeah, so you are very fortunate to have this kind of forum to learn how to embark on this journey. And when you engage with other social groups, it also gives you the leverage and makes it easier. It would have been very difficult for us to get people to be part of this documentary if I wasn't part of a Parkinson's disease support group. And if I wasn't part of TRAPCAF as well, because we had to engage other people in rural settings living with the condition to also be part of the documentary. So we could have a holistic picture of how the condition affects people, being it urban or rural setting. And it was because I'm part of the Transforming Parkinson's Care in Africa project, and that also gave me leverage on that side. So let us understand that our research is not complete until it reaches the people that it is meant to serve. On the social media, these are some of the feedback that we got based on the video that was shown. So we have a comment that says, "Well done, Portia and TV3 production crew, for bringing light to the work we are doing on Parkinson's in Ghana." This comment is actually coming from one of our team members on the TRAPCAF, and he's wishing the members on the team well for being part of this work. And this is also from someone saying, "Wonderful holistic analysis of Parkinson's, sufficient for the layman to understand and be suitably informed. Thank you." And then also we have just love the level of education in this video. And the final one really got into me. It says, "Thank you so much. I just wish this came earlier." This comes to tell us that there are people out there really waiting to hear what we are doing in our labs, what we are doing on the field to benefit and improve their lives. So do not think that research is not meant to be put out there. Once you put time and energy resources into it, it's certainly for someone, and be ready to share it. I want to say a bit on the top tips for owning your spotlight. This is what helped me. And as you have seen, there is the need to diversify the channels. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. Explore all the available options, and each one has a target population. So explore them, the workshops, the media, the articles, the documentaries. Be confident in yourself, trust in your expertise, and step forward despite any fear that you may have. Also leverage on your networks. Collaborations will open doors that persistence alone cannot. And also know that rejections are just temporary. You saw that in my journey. Sustain community ties. also create credibility. If not for my community ties, getting this documentary out would have really, really delayed, if only I would have been able to get it out. Now, all I have for everyone here is that owning your spotlight means having the courage to share your story, share your science, and your truth, even when fear whispers that you might be misunderstood. So I invite you to step forward, claim your voice, and let your research shine where it matters the most. That is my email address and my contact there. We can be in touch. From my own experience, whatever advice, assistance, guidance I could give, I will be able to do that within my own experience. Thank you very much, and appreciation to all the list here, especially to Mawazo for giving me the opportunity or inviting me to do this with the More Women in Research group. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary. I mean, it really touches. Your story is so touching. You're doing important research, and you're also making sure that it's being seen and spotlighted and used. So thank you so much for sharing your story about how to step into the spotlight, not for you, but for the cause. I hope that questions will be coming into the chat, because I can only imagine that there must be thousands of questions of how you actually did this, what it took, and also to Shelley, what would she think if this was a story that was coming her way? So please, please, please make the panel discussion interesting by sending your chats or your questions in. Don't have any fear. Just throw your spotlight in the chat, please. Now, like Dr. Mary, our final speaker is also a researcher who has done very many exciting things in the public sphere. Professor Jacqueline Golding is an anthropologist dedicated to participatory research. She's particularly passionate about citizen science and bridging the gap between science and society through democratization of knowledge. As an experienced facilitator, Jackie uses participatory methods to bring people together and create meaningful engagements with stakeholders, also through art. She creates spaces for open dialogue and innovation, and she supports the co-production and growth of scientific knowledge. Today, Jackie, maybe you put on your headphones. Oh. Today, Jackie will be talking about the care we need to take as researchers, the responsibilities we have, and how to lead with our hearts, while thinking carefully about who and what we choose to put into the spotlight. Welcome, Jackie. And also unmute yourself, please.
Is that okay?
This is very good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And it's great to come after Mary, because I love what you said, Mary, that our research is not complete until it reaches the people it's meant to serve. And I hope that I can carry on along that vein and give a few ideas on how we as researchers can really speak to the people that we are serving. So my presentation is about being careful about who is in the spotlight. So my most recent work is Diamonds on the Soles of Our Feet, which is a really exciting citizen science project that began in the Limpopo, South Africa in 2019 and is now going a bit global. It's taking root in the Narok County in Kenya, with 21 schools there, also in Suriname, and we're on our way to Mexico quite soon. So the title of the presentation today is about in the minor key. So what would it mean to practice science differently? And I hope this resonates with you. This is meant for you as researchers. I just need to go to... So my first is putting in the spotlight. What do we measure? So I think measurement is an ethical practice as much as it is a scientific one. What do we choose to focus on? And it was wonderful, Mary, what you are choosing to focus on is really, your Parkinson's and the people who are involved in it. But I think in my work, we are looking at water quality monitoring in rivers. And we're using young learners in schools to go to the rivers and measure water quality. And what we're doing is we're using the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal measurements, which are nitrates, phosphates, and turbidity. There we are. So these measurements have been decided in Rome, in New York, at the World Bank, that these are the important measurements for the Sustainable Development Goals. But are these the measurements we want to put in the spotlight when we go to Kenya or when we work in the Limpopo? What about E. coli? What about coliform? What about arsenic? What about lead? What about fluoride? These are parameters that really impact on people's health. Often nitrates and phosphates aren't the most important because they come from places where there are big farms and fertilizers, and often in the rural villages where we're working, nitrates and phosphates really don't matter. I'm not saying they shouldn't be measured, but what I'm saying is when we're in a particular place, let's look at what matters there in that place. My next, putting in the spotlight, the invisible, in this case, Ruth. Ruth was a farmer who we worked with in the Limpopo, a brilliant networker, someone who could get to the principals of the schools, could get to the local farmers, really knew how to engage. She was everything that we needed. She was an expert. However, when it came to my university, wanting to pay her, they couldn't find a way to pay her. Ruth was invisible. She did not have a degree. She was 60 years old. They said, no, she's too old. She's not a researcher. Her invoice said she was a farmer, so that's not an environmental educationalist or expert. We battled for 4 months. I got paid. All us researchers got paid, but Ruth did not get paid. Ruth took 4 months to be paid, and it really impacted on her. She said, maybe they think I'm not worth anything. And so putting Ruth in the spotlight, let us look at who are we rewarding, how are they being rewarded, and balance this research with what we're earning and what the people we're working with, on whom our research depends, are how they are being remunerated. So here is Ruth as an expert. Without Ruth, we could not have done our work. And Ruth, that is her pseudonym. It's not her real name. The third example I want us to look at today is the spotlight. What do we fail to see? We're working with 21 schools. We take the learners down to the rivers. They have their measurements, their sampling kits. But as one of the headmasters of one of the schools said, 60 to 70% of government schools in Kenya struggle. There are often 100 learners where there should be 45 learners. There are no laboratories. The river does become the laboratory. But we fail to see when we are working what the reality is. And I think it's so important that we open our eyes. So this is the third spotlight, and I'm going to show you 2 photographs which sum this up for me. This is the first photograph. These are children, many of whom sit on the ground. I do not believe children should sit on the ground to learn what gravity is. These are children that are working in classrooms, often with no blackboards, or as you can see, blackboards that are really difficult for teachers to work on. And as I said, they do not have science labs. We fail to see this. when we do our research, we fail to put this in the spotlight. So my plea today is, and you will see as I have a couple of metaphors to help us understand better, has helped me understand better how to put these things in the spotlight. So this again is what is often invisible. These are toilets where 600 children are using these toilets. The girl children are using toilets with outdoors, and as many of you will know, they stay away from school when they have their menstrual cycle because there's no privacy and there's no dignity for them. So these images are invitations for us as researchers to feel differently, to resist that impulse to explain things away, to simplify, and to cultivate a capacity with what I call, and feminist philosophers such as Donna Haraway and others have called, staying in the trouble, staying in the troubling complexity of it. Let us not, as researchers, fear staying in this trouble and experiencing vulnerability, experiencing discomfort, and what I and perhaps others have experienced, anger. So I will now turn to my two metaphors. The first is the metaphor of the mushroom, the mycelium, the fungal turn, a different way of seeing, of being in the spotlight. As we know, fungus is beneath the ground. It's invisible. We do not see it. It has millions and trillions of networks. As one little part or spore of a mushroom touches a branch, for instance, it ramifies, it becomes something different. Fungus mushrooms are changing all the time. Under the ground, it's not dark. It's full of life. It's full of color. And the fungal turn helps us think about what is often invisible, a different way of being in the spotlight. My second metaphor is about learning from the sea forest. And I take this from two wonderful researchers, two colleagues of mine, Vivian Bozalek and Nikki Romano, who talk about this dense structure, the most biodiverse sites where lots and hundreds of different microcosms cling onto this kelp. They get shelter and mutual protection from the kelp. The kelp is strong, but it's supple. It moves with the ocean, but it stays anchored. I think if we as researchers can keep ourselves anchored and rooted, to have genuine care, to be full of care, careful, and to be aware of these disruptive encounters, not to be afraid of telling each other and the journals we write for and the students we teach about the disruption. Often, if we do not do this, we are part of what some have called slow violence. The research we do is slow and violent. And in contrast to this is slow scholarship. Let us be aware as researchers to take the responsibility, the ability to respond with care. So to put in the spotlight the major key, dominant science, is triumphant, it's authoritative, it makes placeless claims, it's accelerated, it's extractively fast, it's the heroic individual scientist. But what about the minor key? The minor key is humble, it's hesitant, it adapts to the environment, it's localized, it's context specific, it's deliberately slow. So to think about the minor key and remember these two images, I think is really helpful. I have found it so helpful in my research. And I hope these are two images that might stay with you as well and help you be hesitant, be adaptive, be minor. These are some of the children that we have worked with in the Limpopo and in Kenya. These moments, so this is learning with the heart. I think that you can only take in science when you feel, when you're curious, when you have joy, when you're learning, when you are writing poems, you are singing, you are dancing, then science becomes something that stays inside. So in the spotlight are these small moments. So it's not about getting the data. That's the big moment. It's about the little moment, what it feels like to be part of the scientific experiments by the river, and what it feels like. These are big things. They're not just the little things. So it's thinking outside the container and allowing ourselves to dwell in the minor. These are parents and community members alongside the river. And there's a lot of talking, a lot of feeling, and then eating together and having small moments, which are often not written about. And that's the end. That's the end of my presentation. There is an email. That is our website. I'm going to put my email in the chat. There are a couple of articles we've written about the minor key and about learning with the heart, if any of you are interested. And thank you so much, Danida. Thank you so much, Mwazo, for inviting me to be part of this. And I hope it makes some impact on the way we might look at the world with different metaphors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Jacqueline, for your words and your inspiration. The questions that you've asked that I think will probably resonate for a while. What are we measuring? What are we putting in the spotlight? And looking at that metaphor of the mushroom, looking at what is invisible. And then that sort of quote that I think if you take one thing away, I think it'd be powerful to take away this quote of responsibility is the ability to respond with care. That's very heavy, but I think very pertinent and relevant. So I'd like if the speakers could sort of come back into the spotlight, ironically, for our panel discussion. I know that I've seen a question or two in the chat, but before we do that, and while we sort of come back together, one of the things that we started off with in our first module was asking the room how public engagement made us feel. And I know that what has come up in some of the presentations, and Dr. Mary touched on this, was this idea of fear. Shelley also talked about the fear of being misquoted and of misinformation. And so I'm wondering now, 6 weeks later, after having heard the presentations that you've heard today, and potentially having gone through some of the materials, how much fear is there still? So maybe in the chat, if you could just answer a yes or no question. Does public engagement, does the idea of public engagement make you feel some level of fear? And this is truly one of those questions where there really is no wrong answer or right answer. It's really just about how you feel in the moment. So does public engagement cause you any fear? So if you could just say yes or no in the chat. This is more just for us to see where we are, even as we answer some of the questions and look at how to best respond to some of the things that we've talked about. Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of yeses. There's even a capital yes, Y-E, yes. There's a no here, a couple no's. Oh, hi, Anna. No from Anna. Sometimes, depending on the audience. Oh, Jacqueline's just shared an article for you all to look at. Merlin says no. I've interacted with Merlin a few times, and I believe you, Merlin. You're a very, you're a very confident, brave person. So I believe you. So thank you so much for those who responded. And if you want to keep responding, you can. Does public engagement cause you any level of fear? But I'd like if Professor Jacqueline and Dr. Mary and Shelley could come back and we could start to unpack some of the things that you've talked about today. That's possible. So one of the things that I saw come up, and this was during Dr. Mary's presentation, but I think it would be good if maybe Shelley, you answered this question first almost, and then Dr. Mary, you can come in with the sort of the tangible example. The question was talking about money, talking about the hindrance of some media platforms or organizations requiring money. And so, Shelley, first, I'd love if you could just give a sort of like a very broad overview of the media landscape in terms of when there is money requested, whether it's legitimate, whether it's something to go into, or whether it's something to avoid, and your just general take on that. And then if Dr. Mary can then look at how you specifically got around that issue, because I know that was a part of your journey with the documentary specifically. So Shelley.
Yeah, thank you, Zara, for that question. You mentioned the word avoid. I think that is the best approach in my experience, and this is how we broadly work, is when we bring in researchers to write for us, we are the ones paying them. So maybe the first off pitch, which kind of gets commissioned, the idea is to, sort of start building a relationship. So maybe the first article will be a free article. And thereafter, we kind of discuss a remuneration. And the media organization would typically pay the researchers for writing an op-ed article. And it applies to all the other contributors that write for media organizations. So that is my experience. I would also suggest not associating with a media organization where you are going to have to pay to get published, because then the kind of stories that they are probably doing is not the kind of stories that you want to associate with. So there is a very thin line when it comes to, a credible news organization and sometimes news organizations which are sort of making a business out of journalism, where they are running a lot of PR stories. So even I might be sounding like I'm taking the moral high ground here, but in my experience, I wouldn't see them as credible, because then they are just probably giving you a platform, but they are not bringing in the credibility that you're looking for when you are putting yourself out there, owning the spotlight, and going out and finding a bigger public audience. So that's been my experience. And sometimes when I mentioned about, building relationship, it's better to sort of, clarify some of these nitty-gritties of your arrangement with a news publication. You can discuss a remuneration upfront, and you can check with them whether, they pay for articles. Like, I'll tell you, like, just right now, there is a huge ethanol debate going on in India, right? We have 20% ethanol blended into petrol. That basically means all the journalists are trying to make sense of how this is going to impact the vehicles, right? And there is a huge middle class population which is very worried, because the older cars, they are not upgraded to E20, which is the percentage that it's going to be blended with, E20 petrol. And the older cars are going to take a hit, and their pockets are going to take the hit. So it is important for us to, reach out to, experts in physics, experts in all sorts of, chemistry, science. So that is exactly what we are doing right now, trying to talk to them. And most of the people who are contributing, who are writing about it, they will be typically paid, That again brings back to my point about what is relevant is what is something that even the journalists are proactively looking for. And that is something that you can reach out to them And I have had those pitches come in saying that, this is happening. Would you like a more scientific, breakdown of how ethanol reacts and how it is going to be more corrosive, or how it is going to affect the mileage and the, functioning of a car, for example. So that's just I hope it answers your question, but I'm very interested in hearing Dr. Mary and, her take from the other side.
Okay, can I go on? Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. So I think this is from the side of the journalist to the researcher. When they need your services, then fair enough, you will be the one getting some remuneration. But then if it is from the side of the researcher to the journalist, then certainly, because I believe these media stations or institutions are also money-making setups. So they have programs that they air for free, and others that one will have to pay to get in. So what I have done over the years is to build networks. So I have really benefited from networks. People that are within my space, I work through them. So I have someone within my network. We were both Chevening scholars years back, who is already in the media space. She's with the Daily Graphic. So that is the person I've been working with to get my articles published in the Daily Graphic. So I don't have to pay, because in the newspapers, they have columns for help where they want articles to publish. But certainly we know some of these things can be so enormous that if you do not know anyone in there, it might be difficult for you to get your articles published in there. So I have made use of that. On the side of the documentary, which I did together with the support group that I coordinate, finances was one of our biggest headache. But then we took the step, even though we weren't sure how much it was going to cost us. So I reached out to another person within my network to reach this lady in the media space. We have identified that that is her field. So certainly, if we are not able to make all the funds needed, once it is her area of interest or her area of expertise, maybe she will be able to assist. So we sought for guidance on how to get this done and how much it will cost us. So it is something that actually came up very early in my discussions with her. How much will it cost us if you have to help us get this out there? Then we were amazed when she said it will cost you nothing. So herself and her TV station took it upon themselves to assist us with our networks, with the support group, with the research group, to get this documentary out. So it became like a partnership between the support groups, the research group, and then the media station. So in simple terms, I would say that make use of your connections and your networks. And this is something we have been taught how to do if you really want to remain relevant. As researchers, I recently came across a post that said, if you are looking forward to becoming rich, your space is not in the research field. You can't become rich there, because you will write to get grants, which are very tight for you to use for the research. Even in the normal space for dissemination, being the journals, you are still required to pay article processing fee, which are sometimes so exorbitant for some of us on the developing side. And you end up having your findings sitting on the shelf. So it's not a space to make money. So to now add on this media engagement, article publication in the dailies as something that will cost you money will become too much of a burden for you to bear. And that fear can actually keep you in that corner. So try to make use of your networks. And you've been told that failing doesn't mean that's the end. Being rejected doesn't mean that's the end. Keep pushing. It may take time, it will be difficult, but you will certainly break through someday. And do not allow the finances to scare you and keep you in the dark. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that response to both Shelley and Dr. Mary. I hope, Zara, that's given you some clarity on that answer. I also wanted to ask something that I think maybe people would be surprised came up in each of your presentations was the idea of ethics. Shelley, you spoke about a good journalist and what a good journalist does. Professor Jacqueline, of course, it was almost like the core of your presentation was about the ethics involved in the spotlight. And Dr. Mary, you also spoke about the doing the right thing per Parkinson's disease patients and others who you're choosing to spotlight. So I wondered if you could each sort of like point out a little bit more this point of connection that we have between researchers and media, and speak on the importance of I guess, responsibility, to use your word again, Professor Jacqueline, to speak on the importance of responsibility in your fields. So perhaps you could go first, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Can you hear? I don't have to put my speakers on. Okay. You know, my gut feel is that in some ways we are, of course, we've been doing research for decades and decades and centuries, but in the same way that feminism really is, you know, it's not that long ago that women were not voting. I think we are at our infancy in terms of ethics and research. Like, I believe that the way the extractive model that we have, that we do our research, is just not going to last, you know, and it's going to be replaced. I also think there's an ethical kind of carelessness, the opposite of being careful, when the North and the South are doing research together. I'm part often of big projects, Vibeke, at Dunedin and others, you must know about them, projects when we're working with the Global North. Recently it was with the university in the UK, and the consultants, I mean the researchers, the professors, the lecturers in the North get paid like 2-3 times our amount. So their time is considered to be far more worthwhile than the time of somebody at a developing country. So in a way, the poorer you are, the less you get paid. Like, people think, you know, oh, well, you know, let's give them 50 euros. That'll make a huge difference. Whereas, you know, to somebody in the North, it would be 500 euros. So I think that model is something that we are not interrogating, and that we are, and that's not going to last. In the same way that slavery had to end and colonialism had to end, I think our colonial way of doing research is going to have to end. And I think we're all responsible as researchers, everyone in this room. I think we're 90 people, Vibeke, that you brought together. I think if we can all be on the same page, and if we can all say, no, this is not just, then perhaps we can all be part of changing the way the research paradigm carries on or doesn't.
Thank you so much for that. And I wonder, Shelley, if you can talk about it now again from like this media side in terms of this, the ethics in journalism, which is actually a huge part of journalism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to just hear more of your thoughts on that.
I would actually share a bit of a personal story. When I started journalism almost 17 years ago, I was offered a course in digital journalism, but I let go of it and I chose something which was more conventional and traditional because I didn't see it as a serious platform, right? But one thing that I have learned over the years is that the formats have changed, but the integrity and the foundation of journalism that we have learned like 20 years back, that hasn't changed. So ethics, the responsibility that journalists must feel about the work that they do, and it's a lot of weight that you carry, right? Because at the end of the day, the buck stops at you when it comes to information, when it comes to facts. We're living in a very challenging, biased time. I'm talking about the realities of my country, and I'm sure, like, you know, we have different experiences. But overall as well, like the world has become way more polarized, and that has made our lives way more difficult. So a lot of, I mean, yeah, it's a very hard time where we are trying to be as close to, you know, being true to the foundation of what we learned as journalists and what we need to do as journalists. But I also like how I ended my presentation to make a point about things change, but some of the basics remain the same, and that is what we kind of need to latch on to. But at the same time, again, I would say be open to these changes and be open to adapt, be open to experiment, be open to try out new things, because that is a reality we cannot change. Don't, I mean, stay true to the ethics, but also kind of keep adapting when it comes to trying new things. I hope it answers the question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shelley. And finally, Dr. Mary, I wonder if you can give now maybe more of like a tangible example of how you ethically covered a topic where you are going to feature people who are actually experiencing this disease. How do you decide, both in the documentary and also in the op-eds and other work that you've done previously, how do you decide how to cover this topic ethically?
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Generally, every primary research requires that ethical component. And that's why our research goes through ethics review processes as part of the journey of it. But then, because you are going to work with people, now researchers are moving towards what we call public engagement, public and patient involvement. So even before you start your research, you engage the population of interest, not all of them, but some of them who will be part of the journey with you will bring their input to actually tell that what you intend to do will be of relevance to them. When you start like that, you have the people with you as part of the research, and they will be willing to embrace the outcome and also be willing to support you to advocate about your findings and how your findings will help people within that population. The other thing is having this population together. So falling on the support group. These are members I have worked with for years as a coordinator. They have gained my trust that I wouldn't want to do anything to harm them. And all we seek for is to let the world hear about Parkinson's. Let our policymakers get to know that there is this condition that is affecting people's lives. Because currently in Ghana, the medication is not covered under our insurance. And even with the rehabilitation, not all of them are covered under the insurance. We have been working to get this covered by insurance. So if we do not go out there to speak, or if you, the people suffering the condition, don't step out to be seen that, yes, indeed, there are people out there with the condition, how will the policymakers listen to us and take us serious? So these are some of the ways that I have gone about it, letting the people gain my confidence that we are working together as a team to get the solution that we are looking for, which will be to their benefit. As a health professional, it makes my work easier because if they are able to access medications, access rehabilitation, it improves their condition, and that reduces my workload as well as a health professional. However, when we have to do things like this, especially with this documentary, we needed a clear consent from each person that participated, whether the person is willing to come out, let people see his or her face that he's living with the condition. So we had to take that clear consent from each of them. And even after the videos were done, the interviews were done, the members or the participants still had the option to change their minds. That yes, at the time that we were doing the interview, I did give my consent that you can show my face, but I've changed my mind. So please do not show my face. And I discussed with the media person, and it's because it's something she has been doing. She perfectly understands that privacy. And we took steps to cover the faces of such people who didn't want their faces to show. But at least if we could show a part, because in the teaser, you could see that hands were shaking, it was difficult movement here and there. At least the person's face isn't shown. And they were willing to go to that extent to support the agenda, to get the information out there. So clear consent, ethical considerations are key in anything that one wants to do, being it in a write-up, in a documentary, in a podcast. They are very, very relevant. If not, you will spend resources and get something done, and you will get a lawsuit, or you'll be asked to pull it down, and it wouldn't have achieved the purpose for which you sought to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Mary. I think that's really important to emphasize, especially in the modern society that we live in, that consent is a very, very important thing to get from any participant of any of these types of projects. I'd like to, I know we're sort of running down on time, so I'd like to sort of combine Jacinta's question and Merlin's question, because Jacinta is asking about essentially where can she put her stuff out? Where can she put the stories out? Which websites could she use? How would she even go about doing this? So it's a big just sort of question of where. And Merlin is asking about funding, if there are funding organizations that fund essentially public engagement activities like documentaries, film level media for public awareness, or even just storytelling. So yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm putting them both together, but basically, where can a researcher even start in terms of putting their stories out there? And then, are there any organizations or maybe funds or grants that exist that are funding storytelling in this way? I'd like to just also just underline to Jacinta's question. In Shelley's presentation, she mentioned the conversation, and that's a really, really strong platform as a researcher to use. Maybe Shelley, you can just review that again, just in case Jacinta missed it.
Yeah, so the conversation does encourage a lot of researchers to write for them. But I would also say, since you seem to be based out of Africa, one of the African countries, try and look up the websites or news publications or TV channels which do the kind of scientific reporting that you are looking to align with. So, usually, I mean, as I was, talking about, the example of pollution or, the climate space, there are changing priorities of different news organizations right now because things are changing. So, for example, during pandemic, most publications became almost like health experts. Right now, or, for example, the European heat wave, so many publications across, not just like a Carbon Brief, or any other publication like Mongabe, which is dedicated to covering climate change. Most publications were covering climate change, right? So try and look up for publications from your own country and see if you can find which do emphasize science reporting, which do emphasize, which do have, space where you do see like opinion and commentary pieces being carried by experts who have a scientific background or who are researchers. And the best idea will be to reach out to them. And you can always start your email by saying, hey, I came across this article and I thought this was, it made for a very relevant read. I suggest that, why don't you look at this idea, which will sort of align with you because you've reported about this. So try and kind of put yourself out there by pegging on another story or another piece that you've read, which has been carried by the same publication. So that will give you a better chance to sort of send a pitch in. So that is, that is the point that I'm not very sure about the kind of funding to Marilyn's question, like funding organizations that she can look for. But, Dr. Mary has been emphasizing the word networking. And I think that's really, and how she went about her documentary, I think that's really the way to go about it. We did a story a couple of years ago on a rare disease, a family of 5 brothers with a very rare disease, which had completely crippled them. And we did this, we found out about the story through a health NGO, which was working with that family. And we chose to just document their story. I can share the link as well. From a, like a remote part of India where we would have never thought of kind of pursuing the story. So a lot of times, like these things happen because a reach out has been made to us. So it's always a good idea to put yourself out there, reach out, suggest ideas. Sometimes those ideas might fly. I also saw a comment about an MPhil thesis, being has not found publication, Genevieve's comment. I'm sorry, I'm just sort of also reading as I go. So I would suggest that, make it concise, write a pitch instead of, submitting your thesis, and be open to adapting your academic piece to a journalistic piece. I think that's the journey you will have to make it publishable, because at the end of the day, when we, like as a journalist, as an editor, when I get pitches which are heavy on, like with just data and with like graphs, and it is just a piece which has been sent in, it doesn't have as good a chance because I haven't seen the pitch. I don't know what I'm getting into. I don't have that kind of time sometimes because I'm working on tight deadlines. So it is important to kind of think about those things. Go back to your theses is what I would suggest. Think of a nice angle, a peg, which you think is relevant, which might work for the organization you're reaching out to, and reach out again and see what happens then. And all the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shelley. Those were very useful tips. I hope people were writing them down as you went. Jacqueline, maybe you can also speak to the question of where can stories live? where can they be put?
What helped us get our story in the public eye and kind of encouraged me to realize that, okay, this is a really nice project, carry on doing it, was we pitched for the Falling Walls Engage at the Berlin Science Summit. And they identify community projects, and they've got different sort of criteria. So I would check out Falling Walls, but I think also those kind of, the green awards, like health awards, young women in research, like look at where you can profile your project, because often they also, like Falling Walls helps us pitch. They said you've got 5 minutes and you've got 5 slides and that's it. So it helps you tell your story. Then once you've done that, you can think, okay, I can submit. We then submitted to the conversation because we kind of had learned how to take the academic talk out and make it a little bit more accessible to the public. So in South Africa, there's a beautiful, there's the Daily Maverick, which I think is fantastic. I'm sure that the Daily Maverick will also publish there's what's it called? Ground Up, which is a brilliant journal. It reaches a very, very wide publication. And then, of course, Shelley, like them, has pitched to you. But yeah, so I think there are journals out there that are really looking for kind of things that are moving and that are real, and talking about real experiences that aren't necessarily the grand sort of narrative that I was referring to.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And I think maybe we can hear from Dr. Mary to sort of round it out with that, with your tangible experience of where you started, because you did mention starting with op-eds first, and so it could be interesting to hear from that perspective. I've also put a quote. I've also put an answer of Quote This Woman Plus, which is actually a South African organization, but it looks at women experts from around Africa. So that could be something for people to look into as well. But Dr. Mary?
Okay, thank you very much again. My simple response is start from where you are comfortable. We have been given various platforms this afternoon, various channels that you can share your research findings on, being it writing an article, being it engaging the community. For me, the biggest of all is getting this documentary done. That is my journey. For you, the documentary could come to you earlier when you make up your mind, or you meet someone, you meet an agency that is willing to engage in that space. You have the expertise and they support you to get it done. It is not a one-size-fits-all. Assess yourself, look at the information you have, and start from where you are comfortable. Do not hope to do a documentary straight away when you know you don't have the relevant resources, you don't have any collaborator, you don't have the money. Because if you have your money, you can easily get this thing done within weeks or months. But then you don't have the money, you don't have any collaborator, and maybe even the key people you need to engage in this documentary, you don't have any community of people who trust you to that extent. You have to take it slowly, step by step, build your credentials, build your integrity, build your expertise, be known in the public space. And when you approach people, it will be easier for them to believe in what you want to do. So please start small. I think it's a basic rule of life in everything that we do. So even in this public engagement journey, please start small, start from the level you are comfortable with, and engage as many entities as possible who will be relevant to you in your journey. And remember that rejection is never the end of it. Always go back and you will certainly be successful. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. That's such a good one to end on. As I appreciate the panelists, and if everyone can join in with their reactions, I'd like to invite Vibeke back in. But thank you so much to Shelley and to Dr. Mary and to Professor Jacqueline for your words of wisdom and your tips to everyone. I wanted to just say one thing from each of you. In Shelley's presentation, she said, just start writing. In Dr. Mary's presentation, she said, she said, our research is not complete until it reaches the people it's meant to reach. And then Professor Jacqueline said, responsibility is the ability to respond with care. So thank you so much, each of you, for your really intentional and meaningful presentations. We really appreciate them in this group. And welcome back, Vibeke.
Thank you. And I can only echo you. Thank you so much to everyone. Very, very interesting, important perspectives. Now, we are running out of time. So before we close, just a small update. The next module that's about mentorship, it starts on the 23rd of September. And the reason why we have chosen that is actually because we did some surveys and we had some talks before when we started the More Women in Research community. And it was one of the things that came up all the time. People kept on coming back to it, that mentorship was something that was really needed. How do you do it? You know, how do you build meaningful relationships from the mentor side, but certainly also from the other side? So that's what we're going to focus on from the 23rd of September. You will receive emails and information about this through the email if you signed up to that. And you please also join the WhatsApp group if you have not joined yet. The information will also come through there. And I think, Elena, maybe if you can share a QR code or something, so those who are not part of it can get into it. And then, Naliaka, there's something else that we need to do before the end of the year.
Yes. So Some of you may have joined us on the 6th of May for our first community-led session, where we discussed mental health and wellness for a woman researcher. It was a really engaging session, and it was co-facilitated by two of our members in this group. So on the 26th of August, we want to hold a second community-led session. And the goal of this community-led session will be to plan or create tangible activities and avenues for collaboration. So we want to throw it out to you as a community, and we'll ask you here, but also in the WhatsApp group, if you're interested in facilitating this session. So we have a Google form that Elena will share here, but then also in the WhatsApp group. And basically you can, nominate yourself to facilitate the next session that we have. Please come to the session ready to ideate and collaborate. The theme is next steps for the community. So what would you like this community to be? What do you think the next step should look like? It's really important for us that the community is not something that belongs to Danida or belongs to Mwazo. It's something that belongs to this wider group of women researchers. So we really feel like it's important if you could guide what it's supposed to look like. So as you know, we've just restructured the WhatsApp group and we transformed it into a community. And the community now includes multiple groups based on our Learn and Lead modules. So that's Get Funded, Owning Your Spotlight, Mentorship, and AI. This allows you to connect more closely with the topics that matter most to you. And it also helps us tailor the messages and the discussions for each group's focus. You're more than welcome to join more than one group. There's no limit. And each group is centered specifically around that theme. So I believe Elena's already shared the WhatsApp link. Yes, the QR code is there. So you can go ahead and join. And we're really excited to see what comes out of this next community-led session. So Vibeke, is that it? Or do we have anything else to cover?
Oh, no. I think we're about to be there unless somebody else has a burning question. But I think actually we don't even have time for burning question. So the recordings will be shared with everyone. There's also a link to YouTube list of the previous recordings. So I think the only thing is to say goodbye and thanks a lot for today, which was incredible in my humble mind. Thank you so much to the guest speakers. And just to remind us all why we are here, that we need more women in research, let's play the video that maybe tells the story about it and why we need more women in research better than any of us here could tell it today. So Elena, maybe, yes, please. And then bye-bye and see you next time. Bye-bye-bye.
All around the world, women are having university degrees at the postgraduate level, but less than 30% of the global researchers are women. In Africa, of the 97 top-ranked universities, only 21% have women as chancellors, while only 26% have women as registrars. Something needs to be done. We need to start our conversation on how to bring more women into research.
There is no country in the world that has reached gender parity yet. When we do not have enough women in research, we miss out on the opportunity for having women reflect the challenges that exist.
When we miss women in research, we are missing perspectives of women in health, perspectives of women in education, how women think about technology. And that is important to note because without these perspectives, it means we are missing out on interventions, on solutions that actually impact half of the population of the world.
50 women researchers across Africa gathered in Arusha in March this year. The discussion among these women resulted in creating a manifesto. And what a better place than to start by sharing it here with the 300 youth who are meeting for the ULEAD Summit, discussing the future of education in Africa and why it matters.
Where I'd like us to begin is breaking the glass ceiling.
Speak up no matter what it takes. And here maybe we need to know that even when we are talking about glass ceiling, that's not the only challenge women face. They also suffer from sticky floors. So while you're struggling to heat up, there are also those who are struggling to keep you down. So we have to navigate both the glass ceiling and sticky floors.
When we don't include women in research and the academia, we are missing the talents and the innovations that women have. Let's all commit to being the ambassadors and spread this word. Download the manifesto, read it, and share it within your network so that we are all part of the solution into getting more women into academia and research. We need you.